Welcome to the Storycraft Cafe. Come in, grab a cup of your favorite beverage, and get ready to join the storytelling conversation. Storycraft Cafe is brought to you by Dabble, the ultimate cloud-based fiction writing software. Here we're going to bring together storytellers from all walks to encourage and empower you to craft your best story. NaNoWriMo is coming up very soon in November, and we're going to be hosting a special Preptober event to help you learn all about Dabble and how it can help you get ready for NaNoWriMo. Join us over at storycraft.cafe or dabblewriter.com for more information. Now on to our interview. And we are live in the Storycraft Cafe. I am your host, Hank Garner. Today, I am really excited to have Deborah Ledford on the show with me. She's got an amazing new book. If you're listening to this live, it went live about a week ago. It was last Friday, I believe, Deborah. It's called Redemption, and it's the first book in the Ava Lightning Dance Duran book series. You had another series a few years back that was wildly popular, and it takes place in another part of the country, but this shifts a little bit, brings us in a new cast of characters, and what a fun book this is. Redemption is available everywhere now. Deborah, thank you for joining us today. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate this. This will be fun.
Absolutely. Deborah, we like to begin each show with kind of a fun question to kind of set the tone of the show. And that fun question is, what is your first memory of wanting to be a writer or storyteller?
Probably sitting on the porch of my grandparents' house in western North Carolina, in this Great Smoky Mountains. That's where I spent all my summers growing up, and really learning the art of telling a great story. I mean, there's nothing like a Southerner to tell a good story, right?
Absolutely. I'm from South Mississippi, so we cling to our storytelling heritage. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, do you remember specific cases of where there certain types of kind of ongoing stories? Was there a local legends, that sort of thing that that you remember, or was this just kind of the general?
Right. Well, I remember, my grandfather, of course, he was not boastful at all. I mean, he was a charmer for sure. And, but I remember, for instance, my cousin and I, that's how I found out more about my grandfather, because my grandfather would talk about other people in the family, or, stories. He was a log man on the railroad, and he and my grandmother had a boarding house deep in the mountains, and talking about how many people she would have to feed, and how many pans of biscuits would be baked for first time in the morning, and then also to put in the lunches, and then for dinner. So really learning about them. I think that it really infused in me the need for learning about our families and traditions, and they never spoke about being Eastern Band Cherokee. That was something that I learned much later in my life. I found a picture, obviously, of a full-blooded, Native American woman holding a baby, and found out the baby was my grandfather, and but nobody really had too many answers about the woman, about my great grandmother. It's a mystery that will never be solved, and maybe that's part of why I like to write Native American mysteries is that there's information that's lacking, and the stories that are told and the learning through the stories are so important to our culture.
The Cherokee heritage of the eastern side of the Deep South is something that is increasingly being lost. Where I live, we have a huge Choctaw Indian reservation just about 30 miles down the road here. And, and over the last few decades, we've seen a lot of the changes that have happened with Native American reservations and the casino culture that's, come in, and, a lot of change there. But the Cherokee heritage is something that's increasingly kind of being watered down, kind of washed away from our Southern heritage. When you discovered that and started asking questions, were you able to get anything out of, the older people in your family, or to piece together some of this history?
Not too much. I mean, my mother remembers her grandmother, certainly. But they, back then, nobody really thought about it. It's very obvious that my grandfather certainly is at least half Cherokee from his coloring and so forth. And his manner of being, his, very quiet, command of the area, and himself and his well-being. But no, I didn't, when you're young, you don't really think about that kind of thing. And then when you get older, it's too late.
Yeah.
And that's why I kind of, one of the reasons why I connected so much with my contacts on the Taos Pueblo Reservation, which is where Redemption takes place.
Right.
But it also, I introduced it in my first series, the Smoky Mountain Inquest series in book 2, SNARE. That also takes place on the Taos Pueblo. So I don't know. I guess maybe I live a little bit vicariously through the contacts that I've met and the stories that they have gifted me with.
It's so funny that when you're younger and the older members of your family are around for you to kind of pick out your heritage, most young folks are just not interested. And it's so funny that when you start getting around middle age and your own children start growing up and then grandchildren start showing up, heritage all of a sudden matters so much more.
Right. It's so true.
It's that old saying, about youth being wasted on the young, that
I completely agree.
Yeah. Do I understand correctly that you worked in the movie and television business? Tell me about your history there and how that came about.
Right. That was so I started out as an oil and canvas artist. And a photographer. I've always been involved in the arts in some manner. So at college, it was I knew I wanted to be a psychology minor. And so I decided, go to the community college to take care of those, easy credits.
Yeah.
And I kind of parked, I walked in, and I said, I wonder what that building is. And it just drew me to it. And I walk around the corner and the door's open and there's a woman standing there with her hands on her hips, as if she's waiting for me. And it turned out to be the Kim Williamson, who was the designer, award-winning designer and scenic artist and builder. And she got very excited, knew I could paint and build. And we proceeded then to work on, I don't know, it was probably 4 productions there. And then I stage managed a lot of dance concerts and short plays and so forth and so on. And then I started getting paid real money to be on set to professionally paint sets for primarily at the beginning it was trade films, like Intel and Motorola, where I had to get the government security clearance, and it was a little odd. Probably my biggest fame to claim is what is it? It's the Coen brothers.
Raising Arizona.
Yes. Thank you. I blanked out right there. I blanked out. Yeah, and that was a lot of fun. I was not Arizona's a right to work state. I was not a union member, so unfortunately I did not get any title credit at the end, which is really, really sad. But it was a lot of fun. I really, really enjoyed it.
What sort of work when someone like me, who's completely ignorant of that process, when you hear someone talk about painting sets and things like that for a motion picture, what does that entail? Are these interior shots that you're? I'm completely ignorant of the process. Please help me understand. Right.
Well, there's an art director who I work directly with. So he tells me where to go. My paint is already purchased, so I just put it in my truck and I go to the location. Sometimes it's strictly they want you to age the prison bars, in the prison cell, or add texture to such and such. For stage, it's much different. I mean, I was generally always the lead painter, so I knew exactly what needed to be done, and hitting those deadlines, because you have to be done, and you don't even get the stage until midnight when the actors are off. So so the pressure is really, really on.
And night.
Oh yes, always. So it was kind of making it work, which helped me in writing, because I've never missed a deadline, and I don't plan to. And I think that helped train my brain, and the responsibility aspect of, hey, this is really important. People are counting on you. Just get it done.
Yeah. I am of the mind that a writer collects life experiences as they go along, and every person that you meet, every story that you hear, every interpersonal conflict that you are a part of, finds a way into your writer toolbox at some point or another. And I also believe that every creative endeavor adds some sort of tool to your toolbox. And in your time working, as a set designer, or do you ever pull anything from there that other people might think, well, what does that have anything to do with writing? But are there tools that you picked up along that way?
Sure. I mean, experience is so key. That's why I love research, going to the location so that I can convey what I'm seeing. For the stage element in SNARE, I used quite a bit, because one of the characters, she is a scenic artist, a student. So when there's a big climax that happens on stage, so I'm able to really walk the reader around what happens on stage, what is on stage, what's above the stage. And so unless you can see that and experience it, I mean, Google's great, the walking tours and so forth, but when you can feel it and smell it and can convey, even the atmosphere, how the air feels, it's gold. I mean, it can flow from you and through you, rather than you reading about how I now see it, one-dimensional on the computer. Right. And now I have to convey what I'm seeing. Whereas I've lived it, I've experienced it. Here it is. It's a gift, that I hope I'm giving to the reader as well.
Right. And that's such a great point that you bring up, Deborah, because I think people that are especially new to writing think that, well, I can use Google Street View or something, and I can add all of this detail that I see, and the more detail I can add, the better it's going to be. But a lot of times, a lot of the detail that you're bringing in it stays in your mind, but you sort of sift through that and you look for those little pieces, those little experiences that will bring that to the forefront and really make the story pop. It's not about how much paint you can throw on the canvas, to use that metaphor, but it's almost the economy and the using the information against information we already know, that it's that little something that just makes it come alive, and then the reader fills in the rest a lot of times.
I agree. And turning left one way, turning right another way. I mean, in some ways that's interesting, I suppose, especially if if the reader, if they read about the Taos Pueblo and they want to go, that's going to be helpful for them. But it's the journey that we want to convey, not necessarily how to get there. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Great point. Where did the Smoky Mountain Inquest series come from? So you're working, in stage production, movie production. When did the idea that you had a novel in you, and much less a novel series? How did that come about?
Well, I mean, that's a good question, because I started out really writing screenplays, because that's where I believe the visual aspect of me conveying, what is going on visually, that helped me a lot, because I know you've really got to be very, very sparing with what you're conveying. With the screenplay, it's all about the dialogue. So I was able. That's kind of why it was such a pleasure doing books and screenplay. I mean, and short stories. Is that, hey, now I can show you what I'm talking about, not just what the characters are speaking of.
I've met a number of frustrated actors, especially that become novelists, and for many different reasons, but one reason has to be that you go from being a part of a production where you have a limited scope of responsibility to basically being the god of this world, where you have control over everything. And while writing and publishing is a collaborative process, or at least becomes a collaborative process toward the end, when you bring in editors and publishers and all of that sort of thing, for the vast majority of the project, it's just you and your keyboard. Was there ever that sort of kind of the creative freedom to just have control over everything?
That's I love that. I mean, because I can be the set designer, I can be the director, I can plan the blocking. It's not merely, the dialogue or the locations or anything. It's setting up the entire world. It's world building. It really is world building. And that's really exciting, and challenging and a little scary sometimes. but that is what I love about it. And you're right. It's collaborative, because I write police procedurals, and I do my very best to convey real world situations, which means I have very good relationships with former police officers. A really good friend is the head of the crime scene technicians for the Scottsdale Police Department. I've got her on speed dial, let's just say. And so it really is important to get it right. It just is. And then I've got another officer who vets all of my firearms. I pick out, hey, I think this character would like this gun. Can you check it out and see if I've got my logistics and my specs proper, or so forth and so on.
Yeah. The settings of your books seem to be very, very important to you, and they're interesting settings. The North Carolina for your first series, and now the desert Southwest for your new series coming up. Why did you choose these settings, other than you were familiar with North Carolina and that, but the interesting politics, and not only politics, but the cross-cultural kind of collision that happens around these interesting places. Can you talk about that just a little bit?
Right. I knew that I needed to find a tribe that wasn't Cherokee, and preferably where I could get to actually do the research. So I looked at all the tribes in New Mexico and in Arizona, which is where I am. And, the Navajos have been covered by Hillerman. Thank you.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't going to touch that. And so then I was looking at all the Pueblo regions. There are more than one Pueblo tribe in New Mexico, and then I found out about the Taos Pueblo, which is just north of Taos, New Mexico. And I thought, well, that looks really interesting because, the ancient dwellings on the village, there are two of them, the North House and the South House, are over 1,000 years old.
Wow.
So they were known and yet not, they're recognizable, let's say, but not really known to readers. I don't remember ever reading anything about that location at all. Then I found out that it was, accessible to tourists, and my husband and I went and proceeded to fall in love with the area. Kind of by accident, met who would later become my main contact there. We went on a horseback ride, on the reservation, and this gentleman, his name is Floyd Gomez. He wasn't even supposed to be there, and it just it kind of clicked. It felt right. I felt at home. I felt respected and primarily because we were so respectful as well. So it really went on to become a really close relationship with a number of the contacts there who I treasure to this day.
Wow. What did you learn about life and the way things work on a reservation that might surprise listeners or readers that are not familiar with the way things work there? Were there things that you learned that just took you by surprise, or you thought, oh, this is going to make a great plot point for this novel?
Probably the language. For the Taos Pueblo, they don't write down their language. It's all
really.
It's all it's an oral language. Mm-hmm. And so any words that I do use, I spell out phonetically. I check with my contacts. Okay, now say it very slowly, so I can tap it out with the and make sure that people understand what's being conveyed, even though it's not necessarily spelled correctly. Do you know?
Sure. Sure.
So probably that. I was for my first book, or it was after my first book, but it was another trip before this particular, before redemption research. But I had the honor of going with Floyd to Albuquerque. There was something about education. It was the head of education for the schools. And because Floyd wanted to start a pretty much save the language, save the language program. And I looked over, and it was a private meeting. There were only 3 or 4 of us in the room with this gentleman. And I looked over, and there was a whiteboard, and I recognized names of tribes in New Mexico. And there were a couple that names of tribes I wasn't familiar with, but there would be a 0, like a red 0 or a red 1. And I asked, I said, what do the numbers mean? And he said, well, unfortunately, this means for this tribe, there is no one who speaks the original language anymore. And on the other one, wow, there is one elder remaining. So their full intent at that time, not full intent, but I mean, certainly one of the top things they wanted to do was really to record oral speaking and words and so forth, so that at least their original language wasn't lost completely. So that's the main thing, is just the need to learn and to teach the native tongues of the tribes, not only in Arizona, but I'm sure that this, I mean, in New Mexico, but I'm sure that this happens in the smaller tribes all over the nation.
Wow. Over the last several years, I've gotten to know Craig Johnson, who writes the Longmire mystery series, and he's been on the show a number of times. And, you know, one great source of conflict that he's always mined for his novels is the fact that the reservation is close to right. You know, his small town in his books, and there's always a lot of right. You know, political intrigue and the way this group of people wants to handle situations versus this group of people, and how those, you know, cause clashes and all of that. What things did you decide, or did you discover that writing police procedurals, crime thrillers in this part of the world? What sorts of things did you come up against that made for fascinating reading?
Well, I do take a little bit of liberty on the Taos Pueblo. There are essentially 4 individual leader groups, let's just say, as far as keeping peace on the reservation. It's 110,000 acres. It's a massive space, but there are only about 3,000 residents. But so there is no chief, let's say, overall. There's a governor and then his staff, and there's the war chief and his staff. There's the Taos Pueblo Police Department, and there's also the Taos Pueblo Sheriff's Department. So none of them really necessarily interact unless there's a huge crisis going on. I mean, there's always a motorcycle rally that happens every year, and there's quite a lot of violence this year. And so in those instances, they all really, really band together and come up with a plan of, you know, how we're going to keep not only our members safe, but also, they live off tourism. Let's just be honest. They live off tourism. And so they want to keep their entire area free from conflict as much as possible.
Gotcha. Where did the character of Eva Lightning Dance Duran come from?
Boy, that's a good question. So I knew my agent said I have 4 publishers who do in publishing what you do, you know, writing native characters. I said, but they won't pick up your old series. They have to come up with something completely new. And, you know, thankfully I had already achieved so much research on the Taos Pueblo. Ava isn't anyone that I know necessarily. Amalgam of a little bit myself, a little bit people I've met. But I hope that I've been able to convey with all of the native, all of the Taos Pueblo people that I present, you know, that sense of calm, you know, even when you're facing adversity, it's, you know, be the duck, calm on the outside, up above the water, and, you know, but trying to keep
like
up
crazy underneath.
Below the water. Yeah, you can't show anybody that though, you know. It's that quiet calm, and even discussions between the closest of friends and so forth can be misconstrued or, you know, or taken the wrong way. So, you know, Ava is closed-lipped. She's got her mission. She knows what she wants to do. In book 1, she's searching for her very best friend, who is a former champion hoop dancer, who, after an injury, devastating injury, her husband died, as well as a few other dancers. And so she was injured and then got hooked on Auxky and is now a heroin user. And so the tribe has essentially written off. Paloma is her name, Paloma, White Dove Oreo. And so what happens is there's a connection that will never be broken. I mean, they're as close as sisters as they can be. And so she sets off to find her sister, along with Palomma's 18-year-old son, who they become her unwantingly allows the son to help in areas that he can when she knows that she's not breaking too many rules. So I wanted that quiet, calm, but also someone so dedicated and focused that she's not going to stop. She's not going to stop looking.
Yeah. The choice to make Ava a sheriff's deputy seems to me like it was a very deliberate choice. Why did you choose to have her in the role that she is, as opposed to like the head sheriff or another member of the community? It seems like having her in this role allowed for choices to be made with the character that maybe you couldn't do if she had some other rank or, some other position.
Right. Completely intentional. Completely 100%. I knew I didn't want her to be the boss. She would never want to be a boss because she doesn't follow all the rules. Not that she goes rogue, but she has her own ideas, especially of how to deal with her own people. So she is the liaison, kind of the bridge between the sheriff's department and the Taos Pueblo police department and the Pueblo and her Pueblo people. So anytime there is a situation, let's just say, Ava is called in to make to keep the peace and bring her people back into the fold and walk away without any force or nobody wants to take your own, blood brother, sister, cousin, auntie to prison. So she does her best to keep the peace. And so, yeah, that was completely intentional. Also, the very first scene that came to me took place on the gorge, on the gorge bridge over the Rio Grande, which is the cover,
the cover image. Yeah.
Right. The cover image. And I knew that's not on the reservation. That's county land. And it was like, okay, well, she's got to be a deputy. And when I made that decision, it really, really came together, because then she's got relationships not only with the sheriff's department and the sheriff, but also with the city police. So, there are the city police, and then the Taos Pueblo tribe, which is her love interest, is a police officer on the Taos Pueblo police department. So it gets to be a little bit of a sticky.
Redemption is the first book in this new series. When you first started developing this character and the setting and kind of what this was going to be, were you thinking series potential? Was that part of the initial discussion to launch this new series?
Yes. I mean, that was Thomas and Mercer is my publisher. So they definitely wanted a series. It's a 2-book deal. Hopefully there will be more books in this series, but they start with at a time. So yeah, it was completely intentional, and, the character grows and evolves. And I don't think it's too much of a spoiler to say that Ava eventually becomes an officer with the Taos Pueblo Police Department. She redeems herself completely, and the reason why she's a sheriff's deputy also is because males run the show. I mean, there were only male police officers and so forth for the tribal department. And what happens during Redemption is we find out that there will soon be a female police chief for the reservation. So that kind of opens the door to, oh, well, maybe I can do that now.
Nice. I've met a number of authors over the last few years that have, for those that don't know, Thomas and Mercer is an imprint owned by Amazon. And there's a couple others, 47 North. I'm blanking on the others. But I've heard from a number of people that working with these Amazon publishers has been a great experience, that Amazon really is bringing everything that they've learned, not only from selling books, but from having the KDP self-publishing platform, and really empowering authors in new and interesting ways. What's your experience with them been like so far?
It's been an absolute dream. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how much support they've been. I have my acquiring editor is the master. She absolutely, she takes care of me. She makes sure that I'm being promoted properly, and that I know all the stages. And I don't even know how many teams there are. My developmental editor, John Reyes, is phenomenal. I'm working with him now on book 2. And they all have teams in place. I mean, it's so well. There's so many teams that do their own little, not little at all, their own massive, list of items to check off. Oh, for redemption, we still need this. So, long before it was released, I would check the Amazon page. It's like, oh, look, there's the cover. And then, a day later, I would get the JPEG of the cover so I could start promoting that. I sent an email to my lead editor, and I said, hey, did they decide? Did they approve the name? So forth and so on. About, I don't know, a week later, I see on Amazon book 2 Havoc coming soon. So it's so there are a lot of little milestones that you get to celebrate along the way.
Nice.
And I was nominated for the Amazon First Reads program. So all of August, I was on that. So, and from that generated, more than 2,000 ratings.
Which is gold for launching a book.
It really is. It draws interest, and word of mouth is beginning to spread, and the That's full awesome. Promotion, as with you is phenomenal. It's just they assigned me my own PR person. I feel very, very spoiled.
Did I hear you say book 2 is going to be called Havoc?
Yes.
Is there a forecasted launch date for that?
Well, according to Amazon, August of 2024.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, Deborah, Redemption, the first book in the Ava Lightning Dance Duran series, is out now. You can go grab it. We'll put links in the show notes where you can go grab it from Amazon. The audiobook also launched. Have you gotten a chance to listen to that yet, Deborah?
I have. So BoucherCon, the huge writers conference, took place in San Diego.
Just a week or two ago, right?
I just got back. I'm still tired. We were able to celebrate the Redemption's loss during that time, and that was a lot of fun. But we listened to that coming and going. So, Janice is a fantastic narrator. I'm really, really pleased, I wish the best for that version as well.
Absolutely. Redemption available everywhere now. Go grab it today. Use the links we're going to put in the show notes. Deborah, if people are just discovering you and want to dig into all the stuff that you're up to, is there a good place online where they can connect with you and follow along?
Sure. My website is deborahjledford.com. So just my name spelled out. And I am DJ Ledford at Twitter /X and Instagram. Deborah J. Ledford on Facebook. I have an author page and a personal page as well. So I'd love to hear from you.
Great. We'll link up all those places in the show notes to make it easier for folks to find you. Deborah, this has been so much fun chatting. Thank you so much for taking time to come on the show.
Oh, I so appreciate this so much. You take care now.
That's our episode for today. There's so much more to come as we talk to authors about the craft of writing, but also the business of publishing. Be sure to subscribe to the Storycraft Cafe podcast in your favorite podcast app so that you never miss an episode. The Storycraft Cafe is made possible by Dabble. Writing a book is challenging. Your writing tool should not be. Dabble is an easy-to-use online writing tool packed with helpful features that allow beginning novelists and published authors to create amazing stories. Visit us at dabblewriter.com and start your free trial today. Thanks for listening.